Hello everybody and welcome to the Whiskey Dictionary. Whiskey Advocate just came out with their top 20 list and I do like looking at it. I know in the past few years they've gotten a little bit of heat because frankly the ones that they pick as number one aren't necessarily the best that came out that year, and there was a little bit of talk of some stuff I don't necessarily want to accuse them of publicly. So let's just move on from that. But this year, looking at 2023's list, I was a little bit more impressed. I thought that they actually had some pretty good whiskeys on there, and this is one of them. I started looking through my whole collection, and as I looked at this, I was like, that's about a third of the way gone. And when you have this many bottles and everything for me to choose from when I do feel like drinking whiskey that's not for a review, having this much gone is actually a really good sign. And hearing that batch number 35 was number 11 on their list, I figured I'd do a review of it because I apparently never did. So, for those of you that don't know, I love Barrell. I always think that they do a really good job, and they've been on these kinds of lists, whether it's Whiskey Advocate or other, pretty much every single year because they always have really cool expressions. In fact, I did one of my single barrels with them, the Apricot Affair, for that exact reason. I also went with their other brand, Stellum, which is more their own stuff, for the R2D8, which is a heavy rye whiskey. So if you're interested in those, check those out at whiskeydickpics.com because the name is fantastic. You should just go visit it. As you would imagine, being a blend, it's a little bit complicated. It has 6, 7, and 8-year-old whiskeys from MGP. These bring a little bit of a rye spice to it. But then it also has 7 and 13-year-olds from Tennessee and another 8-year-old from Kentucky. When you mix all of these together, you get something a little bit crazy, and just even the concept of blending these various different barrels is something that's so far beyond what I could picture myself doing. It's wonderful, honestly. I think I have so much respect for blenders because, like, I have a lot of respect for really anybody who makes whiskey, but if you put stuff in a barrel and then it comes out great, that is very much because of you, but also very much because of the bottle. If you are a blender and you create something great, that's totally you. You found the cool stuff, you mixed it together properly, and it made something awesome. So kudos to Barrell. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the metrics of this bottle. As I mentioned, it's a mishmash of all different age of barrels. So they have what's called a derived mash bill. And this is 78% corn, 18% rye, and 4% malted barley. This is basically the culmination of everything that's in there and the best guess at what the percentages would be. Let's go ahead and get into the nose. One thing I will say for Barrell, and I don't mean this to sound so much of like a love letter to Barrell. I genuinely do, but I don't want to come off that way. So sorry if it does. But one thing I love about Barrell is all of their nosing notes are a very heavy flavor. It's almost like the higher ABV is carrying a lot more flavor. And when you look at the ABV of this, it's a 58.75%, which is pretty high. Anything north of 60 really does approach a realm of almost too much, like it doesn't take the flavor anymore. So ending just below 60% is still a bold move, but as far as the nose goes, pretty solid. Some of the more subtle notes that you're getting here is like a banana bread. And I say bread specifically because it's not as like short and like sharp's not the right word. When you smell banana in a whiskey, it's almost close to like a banana now and later where that doesn't smell like normal banana. But when I have banana bread, I think of that more as banana mixed with like a brown sugar, which yes, but also something else, maybe even a little bit like nutty, but also sweet. It's like a whole culmination of things. And so I would definitely say banana bread here. There's also some black cherry that reminds me of a little bit of like a Luxardo cherry. So when I think of Luxardo cherries, it's hard to separate them from, say, a Manhattan or some other cocktail like a whiskey sour that I tend to make with Luxardo cherries. So my brain, I can't tell if it's from smelling or if it's just the association, but I'm also picking up some lemon. Maybe it's the whiskey sour. I don't think so, though. I think I can usually separate things pretty well. There's also a freshness here that is interesting. It's short-lived, but it's almost, I want to say like a hay fragrance, like fresh hay though, not like mildewy, but like really just walked onto a farm, ignoring whatever manure you would be smelling, and instead you're smelling the hay. And I like that smell a lot. This is I actually was just at a farm a few days ago, so maybe it's fresh on my mind, but it's something that I'm smelling here. The only other things I would say that I'm smelling are, and this is again, because the ABV is so high, it's carrying a lot of different smells. And I'm getting some like dark chocolate cocoa powder kind of concept here. I think it's something pretty nice. So let's go ahead and give it a taste. Cheers. Wow. You know, given the ABV here, I'm loving the way that they handle it. And this is something I've noticed in Barrell. They are extremely good at hiding high ABV behind flavor. And that's not easy to do. Frankly, I can't even go into too much detail because my only real knowledge about this is that if you use new or very heavily charred oak barrels, it will remove a lot of that burn from the high ABV and replace it with usually like caramelly flavors. So I'm not sure if that has something to do with it, but Barrell is consistently good at hiding high ABV. So they can get you in trouble real fast. So keep that in mind. You also might want to consider watering this down. And I've done that off screen, so I'll talk a little bit about some of the notes that I get with watered down. But for now, we're going to talk just straight. Cocoa powder is a heavy one here. A lot of the brown sugar, although it is present, it is mild. So whereas you're getting a lot of that in the nose, it's less so in the flavor. Cinnamon is something that you're picking up here. A little bit of kind of like a, I'm going to say, you know, I actually, just yesterday, I had these whiskey caramels that a coworker of mine gave me as like a Christmas present, and they are fantastic. I don't know the brand, it doesn't really matter, but the flavor is something I'm picking up here. And so what it is a caramelly flavor that has the presence of an oak barrel in it. And that is something I would definitely use to describe this. Obviously quite a bit more alcoholic than the caramels I got. What else would I put here? The oak is becoming more prevalent the more of this I drink. It's good though. It's never getting to the point where you have that tannic drying out of your tongue. It's more of a backing to the caramel flavor where it's like I taste delicious, I taste like caramel, but there's some oak here to remind you I'm a bourbon. There's some cinnamon off to the side, a little bit of cocoa on the forefront of your tongue, not your toe, your tongue. And overall, all of it's melding together very well. I would love to make an old fashioned with this. I think that the orange and the cherry would go really well with it. I'm not going to do that on camera because frankly, I'll probably do it later, but I don't want to film it and everything. I want to actually like enjoy it. I have the smoker for my old fashions as well. I think this would take really good to a little bit of smoke as well. So something to consider doing for yourself if you have it at home. So let's talk about that overall, because I think I'm kind of detecting a pattern here. I'm really enjoying Barrell. But I've had a lot of their expressions. I think I've had most of their batches since batch 18. And they usually send me some sort of samples, so full disclosure, they do often send me stuff. This bottle, I think that they sent it to me. Sometimes I buy them, sometimes I don't. I more just want to have them all. But in the case of this Barrell, let's even just assume that they sent this to me for posterity's sake. Doesn't really matter. Obviously, I chose to do a single barrel with them. I like Barrell, so I would buy it anyway. This one, though, especially being on the Whiskey Advocate list, probably gonna be about $100. Is this a $100 bourbon? Well, let's compare it to some other things in the same price point. We've got Booker's. We've got some of the single barrel, Knob Creek doesn't quite get to $100 or so. That's a little bit lower. Little Book is going to be higher than that. I'm actually not. Let me know in the comment. What are some like $100 bourbons? Because frankly, I drink this bourbon, Barrell bourbon stuff a lot, and I'm not sure what else to compare it to. So I guess I'll just go Booker's. Booker's tends to be a little bit more gimmicky to me, whereas each individual batch has a very specific flavor that they really highlight. Whereas Barrell says, this is our new batch, it's really good. And every now and then they'll come out with like, this tastes like something, but usually it's more just, hey guys, we did our next batch, it's really good, we think you'll like it. And I think that's cool. I also do enjoy Booker's, but if I had to pick one of the two, I'd probably pick Barrell, because Booker's flubs it almost as often as they don't. And I think you're just as likely to get a bad batch of Booker's as you are something like this. More than you are something like this. So in my opinion, is this worth $100 for a bourbon? Yes, but if you are to buy a Barrell bourbon, batch 35 is the one that you want to get. If you are not the kind of person to spend $100 on a bourbon, frankly, you're probably a little bit more sane than I am. Don't. But if you're going to, this is a extremely safe bet. It's delicious. It will probably disappear from your collection pretty quickly. So keep that in mind. And overall, it does absolutely get my rating of buy it, I think. My hesitance here is the $100 price tag. Absolutely nothing to do with the flavor. Trying to think of anything else that would be worth $100 in the bourbon realm, and there are very few that come to mind. This one definitely does. So yeah, I would give this a hesitant buy it, with a you should absolutely try this if you can. All right. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me here on the Whiskey Dictionary, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Cheers.